Welcome to a new episode of In Peace Stories. Our story today will take us to Burundi and Rwanda. I visited the two countries first time in 1998, 4 years after the ethnic war that took place that killed about 1 million people, 800,000 people in Rwanda and 200,000 people in Burundi. The fighting was between the two ethnic groups, the Hutus and the Tutsis, and it was a horrendous time in the history of the world. And of course, after stopping the violence, there were a lot of efforts to try to rebuild peace between the two groups and in the two nations. So I went in 1998 to do evaluation and research on some of the peace building programs that were taking place, especially in Burundi at that time. In order to arrive to Burundi in 1998, I had to stop in Rwanda first for 1 or 2 nights and then take another plane to Burundi. So when I stopped in Rwanda, I took a taxi from the airport to the hotel. And I noticed that the taxi driver seemed to look from his image and everything like a Muslim man, which surprised me because I did not know that there were Muslims in Rwanda or Burundi. So I noticed he was wearing this white cap on his head. He had a little beard. And when I asked what his name was, he said, "My name is Abdullah," which is commonly a Muslim name. So I asked him, "So are you a Muslim?" He said, "Yes, I am." So I said, "Oh, I did not know that there are Muslims here." He said, "Yeah, we have Muslims in Rwanda and in Burundi as well." And I said, "So are you, as Muslims, are you also part of the Hutu and Tutsi ethnic groups, or are you a different ethnic group?" Because in many places in the world, religion and ethnicity overlap. But he said, "No, actually, some are Hutus and some are Tutsis." So I said, so what happened during the war?" He said, "Well, no, we as Muslims, we declared a position of we are not fighting that war based on ethnicity, and we refrained from taking part in that war." I was very surprised because I knew that during that war, even family members killed each other based on ethnicity or the suspicion that you have a Tutsi blood or Hutu blood. And he said, "No, we as Muslims, we were very clear, and thanks to our leaders in the Muslim community, that we should not fight based on ethnicity. And we even have a responsibility to help and to protect people during that war," which we did. I was very surprised about this. And I started to ask other people in the civil society, in the governments, in international organizations in both countries, whether it is correct that Muslims actually refrained from fighting during that ethnic war in the two countries. And everyone confirmed yes, they did not take part in that war. They actually saved lives. Not only that they refused to fight, but they also opened their homes and mosques as a refuge and a safe space for people who were running away from the massacre. And many of them were saved, their lives were saved. And as a matter of fact, that was documented in some very few Rwandan movies that I have seen. And also in some of the research that was conducted, very, very few, you will see traces of how the Muslims played an amazing role. I was very fascinated by that story, and I started to actually investigate on my own. And I spoke to some of the leaders of the Muslim community in the two countries. I remember the Mufti of Rwanda, Saleh Habirmana, who is a parliamentarian now and actually an ambassador to Rwanda and Egypt. He played a key role in saving lives and in making sure the Muslim community was not involved in that war. And Sheikh Shaban from Burundi, who also played a major role in protecting the community and protecting people around them. And through my research that I was doing in other programs of peace building, every now and then somebody would be talking about what happened during the war, and they will mention also that the Muslim community was the only community who tried to do something positive by protecting people and saving lives. This is quite an interesting story, an important story, not only for Rwanda and Burundi, but I'm sure it has implications for what are the lessons learned from it, and how can we use religion in a way that will advance peace. In this case, some of the leaders of the Muslim community told me that they relied on a story of the early history of Islam, when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, migrated from Mecca, where he was being abused and persecuted, and went to another place, Medina. And in Medina, there were two ethnic groups have been fighting each other for centuries. And by arriving there and becoming the leader of the community and under the umbrella of the new religion that came with the Prophet, Islam, the two groups Aus and Khazraj refrained from fighting each other and united under the new identity of Islam. And according to the Rwandan and Burundian Muslim leaders, this is the foundation that they used to understand that we should not fight and we should refrain from fighting based on ethnicity in order to follow the positive example of Prophet Muhammad and the early era of Islam. I can imagine that by learning deeper about this example and to understand the dynamics and the mechanics that were used to really protect lives and to advance peace in the two countries, we can see how we can replicate this in places that are still infested by religious and ethnic war in many other parts of the world. Think Syria, think Libya, think Iraq, think Afghanistan, and many other places in the world, and not only within the Muslim world, but there are so many other places in the world that can benefit from such a lesson, and we can see how we can advance peace by learning something from those wonderful people of Burundi and Rwanda. I always have a special place in my heart for people of Burundi and Rwanda because of what I learned there. There will be more stories that I will share that I learned from being there. And I hope that this story also was useful and helpful. And until more stories, in peace. Amr.